Today we're discussing a new and concerning phenomenon, AI psychosis. It's a condition where individuals develop delusions and paranoia from spending too much time interacting with AI chatbots. Following that, the UK government has reportedly backed down on its demand for Apple to create a backdoor to access encrypted user data. The move marks a significant victory for Apple and privacy advocates who argued that weakening encryption for one country would compromise the security of users worldwide. This is the Internet Seriously. Hello, I'm Lucian Taylor in Oxford. Welcome to our blog. As an engineer, I'm obviously fascinated by any sort of mediating between humans and machines and the role of AI developers in that very sensitive area.
And I'm Emily Taylor, and I've been following the Apple and Home Office row for several months now, on the top of decades of bad-tempered circular firing squad type debates about the merits of breaking encryption or preserving privacy.
And I'm Alice Taylor, and as a former speech and language therapist and also chronically online TikTok user, I'm very interested in AI psychosis and what it could mean for all of us.
Thank you. Before we dig into this, please like or share. You will see now in front of Alice this week our like, share and follow buttons. We're on all the usual channels. Thank you very much. So, Alice, digging into this AI psychosis, as a former speech therapist, would you agree that many therapists are based upon routine custom practice and could be mediated by AI? So there is a role for AI in this sort of world of talking to people or helping people online.
We've talked about AI therapists before on the Internet Seriously. And I think AI psychosis, it's not an actual medical condition. You can't be diagnosed with AI psychosis yet. When we discussed AI therapists before, we tried not to be too strongly for or against. I think there are very compelling arguments on either side. You made a really good point the last time we talked about this, that, when you're desperate, it's 3 a.m, you've got nobody to talk to, surely a chatbot is better than nothing. And with, the strain on mental health services at the moment, certainly a chatbot is better than nothing. But now we're hearing these stories of AI psychosis.
Yes, so just to be clear, it's being described as a potential cause for psychosis, because we've got to be careful. It is also being explored as a tool for mental health as well. Experts are arguing, Emily, for sort of urging for greater public awareness about the risks of AI, and just sort of it's saying caution. It's a new concern. It's not actually a thing.
I think it clearly is a concern, and there was a report in the BBC this week of an individual who had become really delusional as a result of, in a difficult moment in his life with other mental health issues, interacting with a chatbot about a potential employment tribunal claim, and then becoming convinced he was going to become a multimillionaire. So this tells us a lot, and I think my reflection is, whatever we might wish for, these chatbots are out there. Whatever we might think people should and shouldn't do, people are going to reach for the tools in the middle of the night, or so people are using them, and they're using them for this purpose. So awareness is one thing, but also, I don't know, Alice, you know more about this world than I do. There are certain professions that are very, very closely regulated. I come from the legal profession. You can't just decide one day you're a lawyer, set up as a lawyer, and because you have to protect the public from being drawn in by rubbish advice or exploit. The relationship between a therapist and their patient is one which is incredibly vulnerable to exploitation and exaggeration and sort of making somebody worse. So this all this is my policy brain. It points to regulation, and it points to the sort of safeguards that you would place on a human. Why can't they apply to a technology?
And if I could just add to that, Alice, and we're focusing on you here because you are really super all over this type of subject. AI psychosis is a state of mind where people begin to lose their grasp on reality due to excessive engagement with AI. Now, when I look at these, and this points to sort of regulation and all of the things that you're talking about in the background,
anthropomorphization,
individuals beginning to attribute human qualities. I'm determined. Anthropomorphization, delusional thinking, unshakable untrue beliefs, special mission or a messiah, spiritual delusions, believing that AI is a deity, and then an emotional dependency, which I'm more concerned about, people who are isolated or emotionally vulnerable. Is this just about AI, or is it about any form of, excessive electronic dependency, for example, games? And taking that thread from Emily, if we're going to regulate AI, shouldn't we also regulate digital dependency in general?
That's a really interesting question. You've thrown up so many things there. I think, chatbots, AI has changed our lives completely. In a way that we're only just trying to, catch up with. It was interesting you sort of talking about regulating. So in August 2025, Illinois passed the Wellness and Oversight for Psychological Resources Act, banning the use of AI in therapeutic roles.
Wow.
But AI is allowed to be used for administrative purposes by therapists.
Wow.
And what they were trying to address was, adverts for apps that are like, chat to an AI therapist, as though that's acceptable, as though that's like a good alternative. And it is amazing. I've been talking with sort of younger people in our office, and they're like, oh yeah, do you get those adverts for an AI boyfriend? And I'm like, what? No? What are you but you hear others of them will be like, yeah, I get those all the time. And it's like, it seems like these are becoming more and more normal. It's interesting because AI psychosis isn't just this thing of believing that the chatbot is real. It's about amplification. It's about, like you said, it's often people with existing mental health conditions or a predisposition to a mental health condition.
And talk particularly about the symptoms and risk factors around those symptoms and the causes and contributing factors. So we're going to stick with this, but before that, I think it's apt to do a guilty pleasure online. Alice Taylor, I believe this is slightly connected. So what is this week your guilty pleasure online?
So it's actually, do you know what? I've completely destroyed the show because I said do guilty pleasure online in the middle of this segment, and actually what I should have said is do the doom scroll of the week in the middle of this section, because my guilty pleasure has nothing to do with this topic.
Well, we're here.
But my doom scroll of the week was going to be really interesting.
Okay, let's
and was going to lead to the next bit in the show.
I want to see the doom scroll of the week thingy.
Okay. Can it be the doom scroll of the week? Sorry, everyone.
Yeah.
Alice Taylor, what is your doom scroll of the week? What a balls up.
Sorry for ruining the show, everyone. My doom scroll of the week, and it's related to this topic that we're talking about and that we're going to carry on talking about, is, there's a story that has been huge on TikTok, which is called Woman Falls in Love with Her Psychiatrist. And at first I heard that and I was like, that sounds incredibly boring. It sounds like the kind of, tabloid headline
many
you get
80s
every
movies.
Week. Yeah, woman falls in love with her psychiatrist. And it is such a doom scroll because it goes so deep. And it involves, I would say, an element of AI psychosis, because it's this woman who's, on TikTok, you do a story time. It's like, I want to tell you guys about, this predator psychiatrist, and I fell in love with him and he kept seeing me, and it's a 22-part story, and I watched all 22 parts this morning, and it is actually hilarious. I mean, it's quite sad. I couldn't stop watching, but you realise, oh, she's actually just like, she's wrong. She, like, this man is not manipulating her. She gives examples of things that he does to keep her hooked, like saying, see you next week. And she's like, he'd never said that to me before. It just really shows that he was pulling the strings. And she developed a relationship with a chatbot called Henry, where she would say to Henry the chatbot, oh, I think, I'm in love with my psychiatrist. I think he's really manipulating me. And Henry would go, yes, it sounds like you're really struggling with, these manipulation tactics. Henry the chatbot really validated her
Right. I want
delusions.
to talk about that, which is called sycophancy, which I want to go on to because it's actually a technical point. But Emily, just keeping back with the engager, with the human engaging with the chatbot, delusions, false beliefs that are resistant to reason, paranoia, believing the AI or other entities are trying to harm or control or manipulate them. And you start to see symptoms of psychosis when it's about disorganized thoughts and speech, difficulty conveying information, withdrawal from human relationships, agitation or distress when separated from the AI. This is really, we see this a lot in games and engagement with phones.
With technology, yes.
In general, isn't there a move to try and get on top of this parental education awareness? And
interesting area, because a lot of the research shows there's no such thing as screen addiction, and yet parents and carers are all the time going, my kids are just so weird when they've spent hours and hours and hours online or on their phone, and they behave differently. So I think that I feel that there is a gap between the research and the observed behaviour that the parents are doing. Now, maybe this is moral panic, or maybe there's something in it, but I think that the combination of vulnerable people at a difficult moment in their life, the example that I was reading about, and I've got one more thing to say on this, is the thing that I was reading about on the BBC report was that this claimant in an employment case kept on being boosted up. This is the sycophancy you mentioned, sort of like he would describe what had happened to him, and the chatbot would go, oh my goodness, I cannot believe those evil people and what they did to you. So rather than sort of, I think doing the constructive challenge that a professional therapist should be doing, which is like, without alienating the person, but just gently challenging their view, the chatbot is actually collaborating with the unwell person to create a reality that is not. And this is just something that Mustafa Suleyman, who's been the Google DeepMind brain and now is at OpenAI, he said it's really keeping him awake at night. And I thought a lot about this because these incredibly clever tools have been developed by people who are brilliant at technology. And I think that for them,
yes, exactly.
I think this might bridge into what you want to talk about next, but for them, it's quite obvious that this is not a human. Yeah. It's absolutely obvious. And they're just like amazed that the population at large is interacting with them like a human because they respond like a human.
Alice, you had a quick point on that.
Yeah, so, last week, or a few weeks ago, I sort of gave the example of, like, talking to ChatGPT-4 was like talking to women in a nightclub's toilets, where it's like you come in and you're all drunk and they're like, you are the most beautiful person I've ever. He is just the worst and trash. You should dump him. And it really.
And the mascara's running.
Yeah.
And you're not.
We touched on what's happening, what's being programmed here, and I really am always interested in this developer point of view, not from just developer engineering, sort of maybe lack of empathy with deep human relationships. And what you're seeing here in the AI chatbots is that they're designed to inadvertently contribute to things like psychosis because of sycophancy. Unlike a human therapist, AI chatbots are designed to be agreeable rather than be your best friend who's challenging you. So it's even not quite like the ladies' toilet example, because the chatbot is actually, rather than going, I think your hair's going to be a little bit better that way than that way.
They do, and it's like with the woman who fell in love with her psychiatrist, is they validate whatever you tell them. So, you know, anytime I write a paragraph, it's like, first of all, I just want to say that's the best paragraph I've ever read. And ChatGPT 4 really did this. You know, it would, any idea, if you said to it, I want to jump off a building, it would be like, here are the tallest buildings in your area. And with ChatGPT 5, they tried to bring that down a bit. They tried to make it a bit more balanced, a bit more...
Yes,
like
and
you're
getting
challenging,
but it's also
people don't like it as much, do they? And that is a thing I think I'm really curious about. Is the sort of, you know, when you get what you want but not what you need, and the parent role or the carer role is about, like, are you sure that you want that 57th chocolate, or shouldn't you be thinking about, you know, you're quite boring and you're something that people rebel against.
I want to get round to my question to you, which is, we've got this sort of problem of lack of empathy, sort of engineered relationships, but it's an illusion of a relationship, which is confusing for certain categories of people. A lack of empathy and moral reasoning in the AI, because it can't. How can it read a user's intent or their distress or looking tired that day? And also the echo chamber effect. It can reinforce a user's belief, no matter how irrational, when actually, if somebody's tending towards psychosis that we're talking about, they actually do need healthy challenging. And this takes me to another thing, which is sort of the regulation you were talking about from the United States is differentiating between the therapeutic role versus administration. And I question where those lines are blurred. In legal services, we know and we talk about it. You're a recovering lawyer by background. So, Emily, what do you think? Sort of psychological and health chatbots, no, and legal services, which are purely administrational, yes?
I don't know how you would implement that law. I don't know how you would distinguish between the two. I do want to comment on the way that you've characterised the legal profession. I remember maybe 10 years ago thinking about Internet of Things and thinking about the early sort of conversations around AI and where technology was heading. And when you look at employment patterns since the 1980s, the segments who have lost their job are the repetitive, the sort of the mechanical things that can be done better by a machine, you know, so car plant workers replaced by robots and so on. And it was clear even 10 years ago that technology is coming next for the professions. Right? The safest job you could be in right now is being a gardener or a hairdresser.
A phlebotomist as well.
Yeah, okay, somebody taking blood from your arm.
Oh,
okay?
I'm not so sure.
That's it. But actually, even 10 years ago, AI was better than most lawyers at recalling what the relevant case law was or predicting the outcome of a litigation. And it's also, I was also reading an article this or a LinkedIn post, I think, saying the legal profession seems to have managed to convince everybody that more time equals better. So the legal profession still bills on time spent. So a bigger bill means a better job.
I've worked with...
Whereas the trend in all other professions and walks of life is use technology to make yourself more efficient and do things better, faster, using technology. And the legal profession are either going to have to adapt to that and change very fundamental business models, which they're not going to want to do because it's an incredibly profitable area to be in, or they're going to have a very difficult time, just like postal workers, car workers, and all of the people who've, you know, I think that there's a huge connection between the sort of the Rust Belt people in the United States and the rise of you know, quite angry politics in the world. So there's a big change coming for the professions.
Right, as we move on, just last ones for you out there, people commenting and following us, please give your comments. I have a question or two for you. As AI becomes more integrated into our lives, how can we educate the public and mental health professionals to recognise the early warning signs of AI psychosis? And another one, what responsibility do AI developers have to build safeguards into those learning models? Thanks. It's now time for our Guilty Pleasure Online. Here we go. Alice Taylor again, rather sheepishly. What is our Guilty Pleasure Online?
I'm sorry, I ruined the show, everybody.
You did not.
My guilty pleasure online is the Robot Olympics. Yay! Which we can see on the screen. So if we have a look, the Humanoid Games. It is the first ever Humanoid Games. And you can see...
Oh, has one even tripped
they're
over?
a little bit rubbish.
Oh, no, aren't they throwing themselves on the ground?
They're a little bit rubbish. They're quite good, though, compared to like a few years ago. And my guilty pleasure is that they're a little bit rubbish and they do stuff like they're running in their 100-metre sprint and then they just kind of drift off to the side and then they crash into a group of people.
Well, who doesn't do that in a race?
Yeah, I mean, you know...
This doesn't really... These don't look like Olympians to me.
But sorry, throwing in a football match,
That's
throwing
not very
yourself
respectful.
throwing yourself to the... I've just seen robots throwing themselves to the ground and pretending they've been fouled.
They've been injured.
Kicking each other while boxing and then falling over.
It's quite a well-established men's football technique, I believe.
So I think that our good friend Kit Boga would love...
Yeah, he loves his rubbish robots.
The Rubbish Robots Olympics.
Well, do you know what was hilarious was that our sound engineer saw this clip of Robot Olympics and then sent a link to a robot that you can buy for like $5,000, which... You know, it's a lot of money, but for a robot, like it moves around, it does. I mean, I don't think it really does.
They're only going to get better,
much.
and they're only going to get better at being in the Olympics.
Awesome Guilty Pleasure Online. This week, there was a major development on the ongoing privacy dispute between Apple and the UK government. Emily, you were talking about this on the BBC World at 1 this week. What are the key issues here?
This is such an interesting development and such an unusual way of learning about stuff. So it was not from the UK government, it was not from Apple that the world learnt this. It was from the United States Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, in a post on X.
So just help me here. There's been this big legal row. Basically, the UK have said...
So I will just give you a bit of background on the legal row. So for decades, there's been... the background is the decades-long debate about strong encryption is a great protection for privacy, for security and so on. But of course, it makes it very difficult for the prevention and detection of crime because you can't really look into those communications. So there is... also, Apple is a very well-known, supporter of highly secure, highly privacy-respecting products. The UK Home Office is reported to have served a secret order on Apple under a technical capability notice. This is provided for in our surveillance laws to lift encryption protections on certain things. Now, we don't know what it was about, why that notice was served, what the harms were behind it. But, if you're serving that sort of notice on Apple to lift encryption, it's pretty predictable that they are going to fight. And this is, so what started life as a secret order blew up into an international incident. Apple sued. WhatsApp, arch enemy of Apple, supported Apple.
Right.
The White House waded in. And so a sort of quiet little secret thing turned into this huge international
global
incident.
test case
And
on.
now this apparently is a climb down, but neither of the parties involved have confirmed anything. And Apple, in recent reports, said it hadn't heard anything.
Now, my knowledge of secret stuff is basically founded upon watching James Bond movies.
Watching telly.
Watching telly, and I presume the Brits like to go, this is secret and we're never going to talk about it ever.
Well, the technical capability notice in the surveillance laws, the Investigatory Powers Act, is something that actually has a lot of process behind it. You're supposed to go to a technical committee. They're supposed to tell you whether or not it's feasible to do it, and it was always a very controversial approach anyway.
Alice, during this tantrum by Apple, who said, you can't do that, you can't make our phones hackable, which on principle is one thing, and if you make it a backdoor so hackable for security experts, what's to stop security experts in a hostile country also hacking the phone? They withdrew their advanced data protection feature from UK citizens. You have an iPhone. Did you miss the ADP feature?
I had never heard of it until this podcast right now, this discussion. So, and I won't lie, I think it is quite interesting that I literally haven't heard anything about this, apart from you going on the news to talk about it. You're right. Like, I think as British people, we like to be like, well, that's a very important secret thing in the government, and we don't need to know anything about it.
So this is big stuff between big men and governments and big technology.
I wanted to talk a little bit, very much, about the underlying debate between lawful access to encrypted content and the sort of positions that legitimate law-abiding actors take, which turn themselves into kind of really polarised things. So, we all use encryption all the time. We all rely on it. But also, I think we want law and order to a greater or lesser extent. If there's terrorism, if there's child abuse, if there's serious organised crime, we do actually want the government to protect us. Why do we have to pick a side in this? The technologists can come across as very callous in this. Oh, you're stupid, you just want to break technology and you don't understand the laws of physics, idiot. But on the other hand, the law enforcement community and the child protection charities can often sound incredibly heavy-handed to want to obliterate everybody's privacy because they are preventing very serious harms. And I think that
Well, and you've got young people in the middle who are kind of saying, to paraphrase, we don't know, we just leave that up to people. You're saying young, technologists and stuff, and you're saying, you said before, people just sign up, they give away their privacy, their terms and conditions.
We all do, don't we?
We just sign cookie notices and just agree to things.
Who reads the terms and conditions?
Who can understand them when they...
Who can understand them?
But they're there, and so you feel safe.
They're an average of 6,000 or 7,000 words.
I feel a little bit guilty. I'm like, I should probably read this. But then I'm like, well, I don't...
Emily just said they're 7,000 words.
Well, also in Japan, it's required that if ever you are to say, I have read the terms and conditions, you have to sit and have a reading and listen to somebody read the entire terms and conditions.
Wow.
So do we want that? No, I don't want that.
That sounds like a fun life.
Yeah.
There was a paper years ago that calculated if we actually read all the terms and conditions of all the sites...
I would still be reading them.
Yeah, it would take,
right now.
20 years per person. So.
Thank you very much. This is going to roll and roll, I think. Though I am surprised by the climb down, which does seem more like a cock-up than a plan, wouldn't you say?
I couldn't possibly comment.
So, just for questions to you out there. Well, one really: do you believe governments should have access to encrypted data for national security, even if it compromises digital privacy? Interested in your comments. Thank you very much. On that, it is our one last moment is time for our comment of the week. Alice, do we have any comments from?
Well, boy oh boy, do we have a comment of the week. So a couple of weeks ago, when the UK Online Safety Act was still a brand new thing, we did a whole discussion about it, and I am still seeing the UK Online Safety Act in the headlines week after week. Somebody wrote a comment. I'm just going to show you how long it is as an image. I'm not going to read out the whole thing.
Half a page of A4?
Half a page of A4. So just to kind of summarise, the UK Online Safety Act will not protect children in any way. Do you think that a predator will sit and wait for children to come on an adult website, or do you think they will go to a children's website and pretend to be a child? Why don't people wake up and then they kind of descend into none of you have any brains at all, the ignorance and stupidity in the world is astounding. I would say it borders on conspiracy theories. And then to conclude, they should rename the Online Safety Act to the Stupid Lazy Parents Act.
Well, I think we should. We always welcome thank you comments. Who was that from?
This is from Zrees.
Zrees Rees. Thank you very much, Zrees Rees. Emily,
yeah, I think there are a lot of really good points raised there, which is like that predators don't want to. They the classic policy trope is they don't wander around in stripy uniforms with bags marked swag. They infiltrate where they won't.
They go on Roblox and Minecraft. Is what this comment is saying.
And I think we can say, yeah, they do.
Our guest last week talked about, we're not talking about the specific, we're talking about the general, we're talking about the principles.
Yeah, so Kirsty was saying that last week is actually the objective of the law is to prevent very young children coming across harmful materials by accident.
Thank you very much. We've been discussing a new and concerning phenomenon, AI psychosis, and following that, the government has reportedly backed down on its demand for Apple to create a backdoor to access encrypted user data. Maybe we'll get it again.